KJ Adams is officially week to week. He's out versus Kansas State with separated shoulder, and KU Volleyball has a new head coach, Matt Ulmer from Oregon.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Is going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Another bonus episode on today's edition of the show because we're getting into KJ Adams, the news that he is officially out for the Kansas State game and week to week. We'll get into that injury news, what it means for KU, what it means for other players like AJ Storr, Rylan Griffin, Rakease, Passmore, Flory, Bidunga on today's episode of the show. And also, KU Volleyball has a new head coach. Ray Bechard, the awesome volleyball head coach for KU, retired. And they hired Matt Ulmer away from Oregon, a big-time get for KU Volleyball and Travis Goff. So we'll get into all that on this bonus episode of the show. Let's start up with KJ Adams out on Saturday against Kansas State with an injury. Thank you if you already checked out our preview episode for Kansas State. We touched on it a little bit with the headline of it, but now that he's officially out, it maybe changes things a little. But officially for KJ Adams, he is out for the Kansas State game, and he is being listed as week to week. He is the diagnosis, I guess, is a separated shoulder, which tough kid for KJ. We already knew he was a tough, basketball player in person, and obviously playing through it the rest of the game after going to the locker room and coming back. So I actually did separate my shoulder back in my athletic days, which are nothing to even close or sniff to the level of where KJ Adams is. But it was something where if you even made like a throwing motion, you would feel pain. You would feel a painful tingling all the way to your fingers. And I can't remember what I had. I want to say there's like 3 different degrees of it. I think it's very similar to like ankle injuries in that, like, if you have like the worst grade of it, you have to get surgery because they have to like reattach the, whatever it is, like the ligaments or the tendons or whatever, versus like a grade 1 or a grade 2, like one's a little bit worse than the other, but they don't necessarily require surgery. The fact that they are listing this as week to week, and Bill Self also mentioned in his presser today, like that he is progressing in the right way, tells me that it's probably not the surgery one. Otherwise, maybe it would be more of a conversation of like, yeah, he's having to get surgery, he's out, or he's not progressing in the right. Like, I don't think those would be the conversations. So, could be like a 2-week deal. Honestly, I mean, he's a very tough kid, so maybe it ends up even sooner than that. Maybe it ends up being a 4-week thing. I don't know. But, like, I'm kind of looking at it right now, and I'm not expecting him, obviously he's not going to play in the Kansas State game, but, like, I'm not really expecting him to play in the TCU game the following Wednesday as well either. Overall, though, this is fascinating because if Kansas plays poorly without KJ Adams, I think there's going to be a very interesting reaction because I think there's a large portion of the fan base that it blames a lot of KU's issues on the lineups where you're clogging up the lane with KJ next to Hunter Dickinson. So if they struggle, what is that going to mean? And you have the quote from Bill Self talking about that he's been their best, most consistent player over the last 4 games. And that kind of got people's reaction viscerally for a lot of ways as well. Whereas if they play super well, it'll be interesting because then what do you do when he comes back, right? Like, let's say by him not playing allows bigger leeway and AJ Storr starts to find a rhythm, or one of these other players gets more playing time, starts to find a rhythm. And then KJ Adams is ready to come back. Does KJ Adams immediately go back into the starting lineup? Does he get as many minutes as he was getting, which is around 28, 29 minutes per game? Or do the numbers go down a little bit? Like, how does that all work? And it's going to be very fascinating to see how Bill Self handles it. I think there's one way that a lot of fans would like to see it go. That would be AJ Storr goes off or one of these players goes off. And then, Bill Self realizes that, hey, maybe KJ should be playing less minutes. I don't know that that's the realistic outcome here. So it'll be very interesting how all of this comes together. But let's talk more about what it means short-term for KU in the game against Kansas State and who is going to see more playing time as a result of this for the Jayhawks. This message is brought to you by Prize Picks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or the regular season, Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players, and if your picks hits, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. Something that I'm kind of looking into this weekend, Hollywood Brown played well in his first game back against the Texans, the first go-round. You can get him more than 42.5 receiving yards. DeAndre Hopkins, who is looking to go to his first ever AFC championship game and playing his former team to do so. He more or less 30.5 receiving yards. And then you can, there's a boost right now on there for Will Howard in the national championship to just get more than 0.5 passing yards. He's just got to basically complete one pass. You put those three together, it pays out 5-1. You can do that at Prize Picks. Ready to run your game this football season. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take the game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks, run your game. Thank you to Everydayers catching each and every show and all our bonus episodes. And thank you if you already caught our KU basketball roster fit episode on a bonus episode and our KU Kansas State preview. So what does this mean in the short term? KJ Adams injured, out versus Kansas State. So I think specifically in the Kansas State game, like this is still a game even without KJ Adams that Kansas, you're still going to be expected to win. You still should, if you play well, should be able to win by double digits. Now there's no guarantee they're going to play well, but this is a game that you are heavily favored in, even with or without KJ Adams, right? Now, specifically on the matchup, I think it's very interesting because K-State does play a good amount of two-big basketball, and they're both skilled bigs. Coleman Hawkins is a very skilled big man, kind of playing the four. David Gasson is a big man. So maybe it's a game where you use more Flory next to Hunter, but the problem now becomes because Zach Clements is also injured, right? And so KJ Adams is injured as well, that how much can you play Flory next to Hunter just from a standpoint of you need to preserve both guys because – A, they're going to have to be in for each other, but B, in case of foul trouble, right? I mean, we just saw foul trouble hit both guys against Iowa State. So can you not play the two big lineup of Flory and Hunter as much now that KJ Adams is out than you could in the past to where, we're going to see more small ball lineups, so to speak, for KU. And then who ends up starting in this game, right? Going back to that idea, I think in theory, if Zach Clements was healthy, my estimation of who would start would probably be Flory. But because you don't have that backup center and you don't want him getting in foul trouble early, my guess at this point would be Rylan Griffin's going to be the other starter. But do they go, hey, AJ Storr is a little bit bigger than Rylan Griffin. He's a bit more of a muscular athlete. Like, is that more helpful playing the four against another big man? I think that'll be very interesting to see who that ends up being. Bill Self said at his presser between three guys. To me, those are the three guys: Storr, Passmore, and Flory. I don't think you'd start David Coit because that would mean Zeke Mayo would be at the four. That's kind of non-negotiable. And then I don't think it would be, even though we're going to get into this guy, I don't think it'd be Rakease Passmore. I think he could play more, but I don't see him, just jumping into the starting lineup. But I think beyond the starting, I mean, the more important conversation is where do the minutes go? It's not as much who starts the game. It's more where the minutes go. So KJ's averaging like 28.5 minutes per game. Let's just call it 29. Do we see a couple of those go to Hunter Dickinson, where you're basically saying, you're going to be in there longer and we're going to play more two big basketball with Flory? Do we see, 5 to 10 of those go to Flory Bidunga? Do we see 5 to 10, even 15 of them go to AJ Storr? Do we see 5 to 10 of them, even 15 of them go to Rylan Griffin? What if we just see 15 go to Rylan Griffin and 14 go to AJ Storr? And they just say, of the 29 minutes we lost with KJ, it's all going to those two players. You know what I mean? Or do we see Rakease Passmore play some real minutes? Because Bill Self, his presser, said that Rakease Passmore's 7 minutes against Iowa State were as good as anyone's production per minutes for KU the other night. Now, low bar because that was not a great game for a lot of individuals for KU. But, I thought there were some impressive things that he did. And what if this is the runway for Rakease Passmore is, he hasn't looked totally ready for it in the early going of the season, but now it's been a couple months. He's gotten some extra time with practice time. Like, what if this is the breakout coming for Rakease Passmore, right? We're all wondering, could it happen for AJ Storr? Could it happen for this guy or that guy? What if it happens for Rakease Passmore? And the way that I almost view this for KU, and I think Bill Self is probably viewing it, can you just get one of these guys to break out in this time that you're going to be missing with KJ Adams, right? Whether it is Rakease Passmore, whether it is AJ Storr, whether it is more consistent minutes for Rylan Griffin, right? Whoever it ends up being, can you just find somebody out of this that you say, okay, we need to be playing them that way moving forward, and they took advantage of this opportunity? But based on how he spoke about Passmore, I'd expect him to get some of those minutes. So, like, if I'm predicting what's going to happen for the, again, if we want to call it 29 minutes for KJ Adams, I'm going to say that, like, 5 of them go to Flory. Let's say that 10 go to Storr. let's say that like 7 go to Griffin and then 7 to Passmore. I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit different. Maybe it's like 5 to Flory, 10 to Storr, 5 extra to Griffin. So that'll get him in the mid-20s. And then you have 9 to Rakease Passmore. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of work this all out. But again, KU's next game after this one is TCU on Wednesday. So there is extra time in between this one. It's not the Saturday, Monday turnaround. But I don't know. I don't imagine that's going to be the case. What'll be interesting is their next Saturday game, not the K-State one after that, is going to be against Houston. And in theory, like, maybe it's been a little over a week by then, but like, do you really want him coming back against arguably the most physical team in the country in Houston? And all of a sudden you get your shoulder knocked again, and then it's, back to the basics. So I don't know, maybe it could be, if you're just looking at that, like at least 3 games without KJ, but we do know for sure it is without 1 game for KJ Adams. All right. A whole lot of new games for KU Volleyball's new head coach, Matt Ulmer. What is KU bringing to the volleyball court in Horse Family Athletic Center? We'll discuss that next. Our episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going during this postseason. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for all your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. You can get in on all the divisional round action. Chiefs are giving up 8.5 points. Over-unders 41.5. Lions are giving up 9.5. That seems like a lot. Eagles are giving up 6.5. And the Baltimore Ravens, Buffalo Bills game, close to a pick 'em. Bills are actually getting 1.5 in that game. You can get in on any of that action or whatever you want to go to at FanDuel. Again, FanDuel.com. Join today. Get started with $300 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. KU Volleyball has a new head coach, and it's a pretty big name in the volleyball world. Matt Ulmer comes over from Oregon, and Oregon has been a very good volleyball program. They were one that he took over for, and he kept them running in a positive way. He had 3 Elite Eights and I want to say 8 seasons there at the helm of Oregon, and that would be big time to come to KU. He also is a very down-to-earth guy based on a lot of videos and interviews that I've kind of seen. It seems like one of those guys that like never has a bad day, and it seems like he really relates well to his players. So like, I'll be interested if any Oregon players transfer over to Kansas, right? Because, they obviously have some good players, and maybe they have those great relationships. Now, the key will also be, can you keep some of the current players that KU has? Because they've recruited really well over these final years of the Ray Bechard era. Can you keep them in tow? But a ton of success at Oregon for Matt Ulmer, who was started his career as, I think he played volleyball for like his mom at Carthage College or something like that. He was an assistant coach there. Then he was a assistant coach and eventually the beach volleyball coach at Long Beach State. And he won a beach volleyball national title there. He ends up taking over as the Oregon assistant coach in 2014 for a couple years. And then in 2017, he is named the head coach there, where he spent from 2017 to 2024, so 8 seasons. And over the course of those seasons, here's what he did. He went second round of the tournament, Elite Eight, missed tournament, Sweet 16, first round, Elite Eight, Sweet 16. So, I mean, you're talking about a guy that is consistently going to the NCAA tournament. And on top of it all, he's consistently winning games in the NCAA tournament. There's only 1 year that you can point to where he made the NCAA tournament and he didn't win at least 1 tournament game. And ironically enough, that was the year that they played Kansas in the first round. They were the higher seeded team. They played at Creighton, and Kansas pulled the upset there. And that was a ton of fun, but that's just kind of funny how that all ties together. But point being, he's been very consistent. He's been knocking on the door. He's been so close to making that first Final Four. Obviously, KU would love to go back to another Final Four, but this is a home run hire in terms of what they're bringing to the table. And obviously, you got to, I mean, Travis Goff has continually done a phenomenal job with hiring of these coaches. Like, that's the thing where whenever Bill Self does retire, right, whenever Lance Leipold does retire, I have so much confidence in the world, as long as Travis Goff is at the helm, that they are going to get, that next head coach who puts them in a good position, because I think he's done an outstanding job, right? And, this is another one of those. And the fact that it's not just that he identified a good target, but it's also the fact that he was able to convince him to come over. Just think about it. You've got a guy in Matt Ulmer who is having all that success at Oregon, right? It'd be tough to leave a place like that. He's coming from the Big Ten where they have all this money going around, like, not that Kansas is strapped for money or anything like that, but the Big Ten money is different than Big 12 money, right? You look at it from a perspective of like having Nike right there and the abilities that would probably lead you in recruiting and in the NIL game, right? And part of you makes you wonder, like, okay, well, why is he leaving that to come to Kansas? Well, he is originally from like the Midwest. I think he grew up in the Chicago area. So like this is closer to home for him. Maybe part of it is wanting to be closer to like his family. Maybe he still has family that is back home. And obviously it's much closer. KU has a huge alumni base in the Chicago area. Maybe that's part of it, right? Maybe even though Oregon has all this NIL money, again, this is just all reasons I'm speculating. I don't know if any of these are true or if one specifically is more true than the others. But even though Oregon has all this NIL money, what if they're just funneling it all to football, basketball, and track or something like that, right? And with Kansas, you're getting more of a guarantee of that. I don't know. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe he's tired of looking at the Oregon basketball court. No, I'm just joking. But it could be a lot of different things, right? Maybe it's being in the Big Ten, like that is a lot of travel. And I think he has like a young family, like young kids and stuff. That's probably very taxing on a young family that when he has to go on the road to play Rutgers or when he has to go all the way to Ohio to take on Ohio State or take on Michigan, right? It's probably a lot easier when they were in the Pac-12. Now for Kansas, the trips are going to be a little bit shorter. So maybe that's part of it too, right? There's a lot of reasons this could happen, but regardless of how it came together, home run hire for Travis Goff, and obviously very big shoes to fill. Ray Bechard, a phenomenal job, but I think it was said very well. My friend Adam Dravetta, he posted this on social media and said that props to Ray Bechard for putting the program in a place like this that you could be set up to make a hire like Matt Ulmer and, hit the ground running with that one. So great job there for Travis Goff and KU. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. We'll be back to recap the KU K-State game over the weekend. See you then.